Hi, it's Jason here from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. Today I'm making a video on doing hardwood cuttings. Now, as to distinguish them from the semi-hardwood cuttings that I made a video on a couple of months ago, these ones actually, the main difference is that they take a different timeline. So the semi-hardwood cuttings that I put into the greenhouse earlier on, they have leaves on, they're an active growth, and I need them to root relatively quickly. So I put a mist on them, I keep them at warmer temperatures, and I expect them to root within the range of 4 to 6 weeks. Hardwood cuttings are a completely different animal. They look similar, they might be of a similar length, but I don't put them in with leaves on. They're not an active growth, they're sort of semi-dormant, and they sit there slowly callousing or rooting over a course of 6 to 8 months. So I won't be taking these things out of the ground until next year in the mid-summer to almost fall region where I expect them to be rooted. So I'll show you how to do that on the rows here. First thing that you start with is a sharp set of clippers, and I've just sharpened those, and make sure that they are also cleaned between varieties. The disinfectant stops me from spreading disease from rows to rows. So if you want to come in here for a second, I'll show you that on the rows here, the main thing for hardwood cuttings is that I'm choosing this year's growth. So this stem here, this big long stem you see here, is actually all from this season. I can cut it way back down lower at this and get a good 4-foot section of stem or 3-foot section of stem. So I'm going to throw that down and I'm going to cut another one here. Now, what I'm not going to cut from is I'm not going to cut from last year's growth. So if you look at this stem here, this is very woody, very dark, new branches coming out of it. So if I took a cutting off of this for a cutting, I'm not sure that that would be successful. I don't think there's as many active buds on there. It's older wood, it's going to have a harder time rooting. I've, by experience, done this year's growth and I've done previous year's growth. Both the literature and my experience shows me that older growth doesn't do as well as a cutting. So again, I'm looking for the growth that is this year's. You can see a nice long section here that is this year's growth. You can see it doesn't have branches coming out of it. It's still sort of a green color, not all woody down there. Has relatively fresh buds. And I showed you on the other video how to determine if it's the right firmness. You shouldn't be able to bend this. If it's really, really soft like that, it's probably not going to be appropriate as a hardwood cutting. I'm going to take one more cutting here off of this year's growth. There you go. One more there. And then I'm going to take those into the greenhouse and I'm going to show you how to stick them for rooting. This is where I've decided to do my hardwood cuttings this year. It's actually inside of a greenhouse structure, but I should say right away, that's not the way that you have to do it. It's just, for me, it was convenient. It was a spot that I had well prepared already, and I can control the moisture really well in here. What I've done is, you can look back here, and if you want to get a close-up a little bit here, I've buried a whole bunch of hardwood cuttings already, and what I may have here is somewhere in the range of 600 stuck already. What I want to show you is how I'm preparing the space for it here. Okay, I'm doing this a little differently than I see other people do it. Normally when they're doing hardwood cuttings, you'll see them dig a trench, stick the cuttings down and then backfill around them, just with some sharp sand across the bottom or that kind of thing. This is a well-prepared bed, and I'm doing it just to make it easy for myself. I'm going to use the pitchfork here for dibbling instead. So just following the pattern that I used previously, I'll stick this down in low, spin it around to get some large dibbling holes where I'm going to stick the roses. And I'd like to do one more row just to follow the pattern. And what this does for me is it gives me nice straight lines. And there's 6 tines on the pitchfork here. I use the first one, as you can see along there, I use the first one for labeling, and then put a row of 5 cuttings down beside it. So the next thing I'm going to do is just show you what an appropriate cutting looks like. So from the stems I took in the garden, this variety, by the way, is Duchess of Portland, or Portlandica. It's a Portland rose. And I don't need any leaves. So if I'm going to this top portion here, I don't need any of those leaves or leaf petioles on it. So I'm actually going to cut that section off because it's a little bit thin. And on this here, you're looking for a section that might be between 5 and 7 inches. 6 inches would be fine. And you can see the top cut I made there is just above a node. That red bud you see there is one node on the rose. The bottom cut I'm going to make is also going to be just below a node. So making the cut there, and that would be an appropriate stem. Now, when you see this on other instructions, you'll sometimes see people take an angled cut across the top. I've got no problem with that. The main reason for it is to identify the top of the cutting from the bottom of the cutting, which when I do it, I can actually just tell because of the direction that the bud is coming out of the leaf scar. And plus, because I'm going to be sticking this right away, I won't have to remember that. So I'm going to take that and stick it in the ground here. And you can see that I put it in about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way, all the way buried into the ground. And I'm going to keep on going on this, throw in 4 more. So that's 1. Taking out a little section of stem that didn't have any nodes on it. Go with a second one. Starting to get a little bit thick. Usually you want to aim for a cutting that's no more than, say, a pencil's width. Go a little bit thicker, that's fine. So I got 4 there, including the one I've already buried. And I'm going to take 1 more here just to finish the row. They don't have to be exactly the same length. You can see they are similar anyway. And I'm going to go ahead and stick those now. Okay, one more step here is don't forget to label it right away. I'm sticking that into the 6th tine hole that I used there, and just give them a little push like that, and now those are buried. After finishing all that, just to make sure that the soil is nice and moist, I may throw a splash of water on it, and then I leave these in the ground. And the schedule, like I mentioned on these, is I won't be worrying about these all the way through the winter. If it gets cold out here, they're pretty resilient. I won't be worrying about these in the early spring. I may, as it gets to warmer in here, over the summer, spare a little bit of watering, just because these aren't outside, they're not going to get rain and that kind of thing, so I'll be watering this just to keep it moist, and then I'll be checking for roots sort of mid-late summer next year. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below.